welcome everyone. Thanks for attending my talk about Java modules and practice with Spring Boot. But first, let me introduce myself. My name is Jaap Coomans. I'm a Java developer. I work for Group 9 in the Netherlands. And that's also where I live, in Tilburg, city in the south of the Netherlands. And I've been doing Java ever since 2002, professionally since 2006. And outside work, I'm also a father and a husband, and I like to play board games. Not just holding them prettily for a picture, but actually playing them. So enough about me. You're here for the modules. So what's the current state of the module system? They've been introduced in September 2017, so it's been roughly a year and a half. So where are we at? First of all, tooling support, pretty good. Maven was ready from the get-go. Most IDEs have support for modules. There's even some rumors that you can work with modules with Gradle. I'm not a Gradle user. I know it's not officially supported, but apparently it works pretty well. So from that perspective, we're good. We can use them, we can work with them, but we also use a lot of frameworks and libraries, obviously. And the adoption of modules amongst them is actually pretty low still. And that also has to do, of course, that they in turn depend on others, and they're waiting for each other, and there's other concerns. But still not really a lot of adoption there. And then even worse, developers like you and me, the adoption amongst them is really, really low. I did a project with modules a couple of months ago, and I've spoken to many people about them ever since, and there was no single other developer outside that project that said, oh yeah, I work with modules too. So there's still a way to go. But what's holding us back then? Why aren't we all using modules? Because we've been craving for it, or some of us have been craving for it ever since it was announced for Java 7 initially. And actually, there's a talk of Sander Mak I attended last year, and he said, yeah, well, most people perceive it as eating their veggies. You know it's healthy, but there's something about them, and yeah, these are my kids, and you can tell by their faces, something is not right. Something is not right. And I agree with them, because we love our veggies. So, more modules, more veggies. Okay, you like it. I see the doubt in your faces. Why? Why do you like modules? And for that, I want to take you back a little bit in time and tell a little story. Because last year I started at a client of mine. They had a big legacy application, and that has been in development for roughly 15 years. Hundreds of developers working on that. A lot of legacy, even legacy within the legacy. And there was a little bit of an architecture picture resembling the thing you see on screen right now. It's not exactly that, of course. But they nicely isolated their legacy system, their legacy framework that was built in-house, and then built up a new architecture besides that was layered. Not my favorite type of architecture, but there was some structure. But after a couple of hours, I realized this was more accurate. So more modules, more dependencies, especially dependencies pointing in all kinds of directions that were never intended to be there. But this was traceable, it was all in the POM files, so okay, fair enough. And you can expect that from a system that's been 15 years in the making continuously. But then I continued, and after a couple of weeks I realized this wasn't even the full picture. This was just the picture of the structure of the sources. The runtime dependencies were even more. There were actually calls via reflection from the lowest level persistence layer to the service layers. So a lot of circular dependencies, it was a mess. and this was actually the first project I was ever in where I stopped refactoring a little piece after a week because it was just plain impossible. It was really a spaghetti. So when we got the chance there with our team to start on a new application, I thought, okay, apparently there's some difficulty here with maintaining our architecture. Let's see if modules can help us out. So what we started out with was a proof of concept application that another team already built, Spring Boot, Java 8, so it was already better than what we had, but I wanted to prevent further problems. So what I will be showing you today is a demo that's more or less similar of what I did for that client. But before we go there, what challenges will we face? There's actually two major challenges right now if you want to migrate your applications to modules. First of all, split packages. Split package is a package with the same name that's being exported by more than one module on your module path. The module system doesn't allow that. And now you might think, okay, that's not too big of an issue, we don't have that. But just imagine larger frameworks, larger libraries that are spread across multiple jars. Mostly they share the same root package name. And sometimes in that root package there's classes in different jars. It's your first split package already. So it's really out there. Second problem, or not a problem by themselves, are automatic modules. An automatic module is a module that is not actually a module, just a plain jar file, but it's on your module path, so it's interpreted as a module by the JVM. And it has a couple of properties. For instance, an automatic module by default exports and opens all its packages to the outside world. And also, it reads all other modules. And up until here, there's not too big of a problem. This is just the behavior you already had on JDK 8 and lower. This is how these jars were supposed to be used. Okay. But the next point is a little bit of an issue. Because the name of an automatic module is derived from the file name. So version identifiers are stripped off, special characters are stripped off, and then you're left with a module name that's derived from the actual file name of the artifact. And again, you might think, okay, not too big of an issue. It's okay. But you can't have more than one module on your module path with the same name. And Robert Scholten from the Apache Maven Foundation actually did some research, and he found 3,500 possible collisions in Maven Central alone. So that's outside your own internal libraries. And some of these aren't that harmful, like the artifact ID parent. It's not something you will depend on as a library. But the runner-up actually is the artifact ID library, which is something you will depend on as a library. So that's a possible issue. Luckily, there's a workaround, or a way to prevent that for library maintainers. And they can add an automatic module name entry in a manifest file. And it's a way of saying, okay, if I will ever become a module, this will be my name. So that way you can define a unique module name. And by now, most of the community has settled on reverse DNS naming for that, like we do with our packages, like we do with our Maven group IDs. That really results in unique module names. Okay, now of the theory, what will we be building? So like I said, I like board games. So I thought, oh, okay, my demo can be about board games. I built a really simple application that allows you to post and get some information about board games. And also, of course, it's nice to know some ratings. Is it worth playing? So my architecture will look something like this. At the very bottom, there's the domain module. Has no dependencies whatsoever, pure Java. Then, on top of that, there's the modules that form the boundary of the system. So there's a persistence layer with Spring Data Mongo, and there's a REST API, depending on Spring Web. And then you see a module Board Game Geek Client, for those of you not aware, Board Game Geek is the biggest website in the world about board games. Has information about any board game you can imagine. And the nice thing is they expose an XML API via which I can get the ratings of board games. Because I have so little users, it's better to get the rating somewhere else, and also it gives a nice demo effect. So for that module I'm depending on JaxB, and I'm using OpenVane as a REST client. And then of course I want my application to be secure, so there's a security module with Spring Security, using some JSON Web Token library, and to pull it all together there's the application module, and that actually depends on Spring Boot. Okay? That was a little lie on that slide. Sorry for that. So the actual project I did was with DB2, and I thought, well, wouldn't it be more sexy for my demo if I use Mongo? And unfortunately, I already had an issue there. So apparently there's a split package issue in the legacy MongoDB client. And at first I thought, okay, I'll work around that. There's a newer MongoDB client, the async one, and that has no split package issue. They specifically resolved that, so I will be good. But then it turns out that Spring Data Mongo actually relies pretty heavily on the legacy MongoDB client. So I was stuck there. So sorry for that. I went back to Spring Data JPA, and it's now running with a Postgres database. So how do we go about that? The first thing you want to do when you want to migrate your application to modules is to get your dependencies up to date. And of course there's many other reasons to do that, like security, support, features that you need. But in this case, as I said, there's not many libraries that really adopted it yet, but it's an ongoing process. More and more will add to the field. And by upgrading to the latest dependencies, you just eliminate some possible problems that you will run into with older versions. So it's a matter of creating a smaller space for your problem you're facing, or challenge, we'll call it. So step 2, same reason, run your application with JDK 11 or higher if you don't already do so, because there's some tricky stuff in there. Like for this application, I'm depending on JaxB, which has been removed from Java 11. So I first had to replace it with some other JaxB implementation. So I chose the Sun RI of JaxB. Next step, further in line, compile with JDK 11 or higher. Again, this is just to make your problem space smaller. So actually, these steps are just preparation. And step 4, prepare the module structure. So in my case, the application that we inherited was actually one big single Maven module. So it was nicely structured, that was okay, but on the source level it was still one module. And what I did there was first creating a big Java module out of that application and then later split it up. And I wouldn't do that again because it got me right into all the details and all the issues to run into that you can possibly see, because everything will go in one go. And by splitting up in your module structure before you're actually migrating to Java modules, you can go module by module, step by step, and therefore also making your problem space smaller, going over iterations. So then step 5, logically, is add module descriptors, bottom up. So you start with the module at the very bottom of your dependency graph, because it has no dependencies, or a little amount of dependencies. So here we will actually see some code. So let's switch over to my IDE. And as you see, I have an application here. I did all the preparation of the steps I described before. And there's an application model, module for
Board Game Geek client, the domain module, persistence module, REST API, security, it's all there. And to show what it does, let's start it. Okay, it's up. So first of all, I need to log in. And that gets me a JSON Web Token. Postman will pick that up and apply it to the next command. I want to create a board game. So this is a post endpoint. Send in the board game. It's created and it returns the result, giving me back an ID again. Postman will pick that up. So I can check, can I retrieve the game? Yes, I can. And as you see here, there's also a Board Game Geek ID. So that's the identifier that Board Game Geek uses. So I have a separate endpoint to get the ratings from Board Game Geek. Let's see if that works. It does. So it's, well, 7.8 for this game. So if you don't believe it, let's see. It's this game on Board Game Geek. Okay, they also say 7.8. So it's actually working. Cool. But now, of course, we're here for the migration. So starting off at the very bottom of the module graph. As you see, IntelliJ has support. It says, okay, create me a module info cloud. And there we go. So reverse DNS name. This way, my module name is unique. And this is a module without any dependencies. So I don't have to declare any requires here. And I can just say, okay, there's two packages in there, the root level package and a command package, and these are relevant to the rest of my application, so I want to export these. Okay, that's it. My first module descriptor is done, okay? So now let's check if we can get that to compile. So now using Maven directly, let's see what it does. Okay, it's running. Ooh, ouch. I just started and I already have an error. So as you see here, it's complaining about some fork issues, and it has to do with my unit test. So there's unit tests in there. I'm using JUnit Jupyter, and apparently there's a bug in the Surefire plugin in relation with modules and JUnit Jupyter. So although I'm actually on the latest final version of the Surefire plugin, I will now upgrade it to a milestone release which fixes the bug. You could also set the fork count to 0, but that's just a workaround. So let me fix that. Okay, there we go. So it's a, yes, import changes please. It's a newer version. So let's see what it does now. Will it compile and run the test? Okay, all the way to the end. So, cool. Now, also check. Okay, is it running? Sorry. Also check if it still runs and does what I want it to do. So, booting. Yes, it's up. Okay, so let's briefly go through it. See if it all works. Yes, that works. That works. Okay, fine. So, that was step one, but this was the easiest one. So we'll now head on to the next module. It's a little more complicated one, security. So it has no internal dependencies, but it has external dependencies. So I actually prepared this a little bit because otherwise it would become a little tedious. So as you see, it has quite a lot of dependencies on several Spring modules. And as Jurgen stated this morning, Spring isn't modular yet, and it's not on the short-term roadmap. But what they did is define automatic module names in all their jars. So that's really cool. It helps me out as a developer using modules, and it doesn't force them into becoming modular themselves. So that's good. And that's why I separated these two out, because these are actually derived from the file name. And by separating them out in my module descriptor, I know, okay, this part is the dangerous part. If this ever becomes a module, it might change name, and I might be hurt. And then there's two packages in there that I both need to export for Spring. Okay, good. So that's working. Oh, sorry. Let's head on to the next one. So this is the first one that actually has an internal dependency. The Board Game Geek client. Okay, I was a little too quick with that. Okay, so define a unique name again, and here it depends on my domain module. So it's nothing really fancy about that. Also depends on JaxB, and again, Fein hasn't declared automatic module names, so I separated them out. Then it exports only one package, but there's more in it. So there's the root level package that has some implementations and an internal interface. There's the XML API package that's for the JaxB implementation. But I only export the factory package because that's the only thing that really matters to the rest of my application. It's the only thing I really want to expose. The factory will be used by Spring to create some beans for me. But it also opens a package. And open says, okay, I want to make this available for deep reflection to others. And the reason I did that here is because JaxB requires that. It does deep reflection on your classes. So okay, got that working. Let's see if it still runs. Ooh, that was quick. Okay, so there's a module missing. We'll see about that later. And there's a lot of these here. Okay, reads package comes an XML bind from both JaxB impl and JaxB core. Okay, so that is a split package issue. So in the current latest version of JaxB 2.3, there's a split package issue. And I was really struggling, okay, how do I get around this one? And luckily, in Maven Central, there's also kind of a, it's a build version of 2.4, but yeah, you know, there's some issues with Java EE moving forward currently. So, but it's already on Maven Central, so you can perfectly use it. So let's fix that. So there's a couple of dependencies in here, including the one it was complaining about that it couldn't find, and I can replace these all with one. So you see it includes a build number which says, okay, this is not really a final version, but it works for me in this case. Not saying that you should do this directly in production in any application, but it's worth considering. So that should do the trick. Okay, it's now booting, and it's there. Okay, cool. So we're some way already. Now let's do the final two, persistence. Oh. Add a module descriptor there. Again, has a unique module name at the top, depends on my domain module, depends on Java persistence, depends on Spring Data JPA, depends on Spring transaction, and it exports its only package, and it also opens that package. And you see, I did it a little differently. I should have done it in the other module as well. But this time I explicitly said, okay, I open it for deep reflection only to Spring Core and only to Hibernate. Because these are the two I know have the need to do deep reflection on my classes, and I allow them to, but I want no one else to be able to do that. Okay, so that leaves one more module, the REST API. And this is actually the smallest one. So it exposes one package, and it requires one module, internal module. It requires only Spring Web, that's all. And it exports only one package. So that's really easy. So now, except for one, we migrated all our modules. And the reason why the other module hasn't been migrated yet, because I defined that as a separate step. Because up until now, I've actually been cheating a little bit, because I'm compiling them as modules, defining them as modules, but my main application module is not a module yet. So I'm not running on the module path. I'm just running on the class path. So I don't get all the benefits from the module system, but also I don't get all the hurdles running it. So last step is add a module descriptor to your main jar. And the main reason why this is worth a separate step, because now you will run into runtime issues. So this will be a little bit of a bumpy ride. Let's see. Okay, there we go. Oh, sorry for that. Last module descriptor. Okay, so this one depends. Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah. It's the same issue. Always the same. PowerPoint overriding my. Sorry for that. This better? Okay. You didn't miss a lot. So it requires all my other modules in my application, and then there's some Spring dependencies, and then it exports two of its packages, the one holding the main class and the other one holding a Spring configuration class. Okay, so now when I start it, it will run on the module path. Let's see if we get that working. Ah, okay. Damn, I forgot something. So it's now complaining about two more things that are missing in the application module. So Java persistence is also needed here, because I use the configuration class to inject the entity manager. So this is actually how I got to most of my module descriptor contents. You get this error and you say Alt-Enter, and IntelliJ helps you out. It says, okay, there's something in your Maven configuration, you might be able to use that. Okay, so add it to my module descriptor. But for the domain one, it's actually a little bit different for me, because my other modules use classes from the domain module in their public API. So I can say, okay, require them for my application module, but that wouldn't really be fair. What's better in this case is, and for this demo it doesn't really matter where I define it. Okay, this says it requires domain, but it can also say requires transitive, saying, okay, if you depend on me, you will also implicitly depend on the domain module. And that's a fair choice here, because the class from the domain module are part of the public API of this module. So that should have resolved my issues. Let's see where we go now. Okay, other one. Won't even start. Okay, so modules. Okay, again, split package issue. And this one is a little bigger, so I tried to work around this by choosing different libraries, but then I bumped into other issues until I realized that this actually concerns only two classes. So there's a jar on my class path, on my module path, with only two classes, which both implement an interface from the other module using Jackson. So well, I can do that myself. So that's a little bit more work, so I prepared that. Okay. So yes, import changes. What that did here in my security module, added a new package with 2 classes, a little change here in another class that's not too interesting, but also here in the module info you now see, okay, I directly depend on Jackson, what I otherwise would depend on anyway, indirectly. So got that resolved. Now see where we head next. Ouch. Again, okay. This is in your face illegal access exception. Okay, so it has something to do with reflection. Most likely, I'm not opening up. And again, that's true. Okay, so this is rather easy. I can actually more or less copy paste this to fix the issue. So my application module, let's see where it is. It doesn't open that one. Can remove that. And by now I already know, okay, that gives me a hunch I might have forgotten another one here, because it will also want to introspect the other one. Okay. So it's starting. Short-lived. Again, illegal access exception. Okay, yeah, sorry. This wasn't part of my plan, but it's the same issue. But then in the security module. So let's see. Hope I didn't forget one now. Okay, different kind of error. That's always good. That means you're out of the type of error you had before. So there's a lot here. Okay. Oh, class not found exception. That's interesting. So apparently I also depend on Java SQL. Okay. Let's add that as well. Oh, so, and now the next one. Oh, again, class not found. Okay, byte body. It's a byte manipulation library that's being used by a lot of frameworks. So, could have. Oh, not the right one. Sorry. It shouldn't be here. It should be. Let's see. No, it should be here. Am I not in my application? Oh, this is security. Sorry. Okay, that really. Yeah, sorry. Byte body. And the cool thing I want to show here is IntelliJ helps you out here as well to find out where it comes from. So if I now click on this, byte body actually is fully modular. So I go directly to the module descriptor of byte body. It's really cool. So I get more information about the library. So starting, okay, looking better. Ooh, one more. That's a strange one. No such method exception. And there's some, okay, so CGLip is involved. And this one really took me quite some time to resolve. And required a lot of debugging to find the actual root cause of the issue. And apparently, Spring is using some features of the JDK internals that you shouldn't really be using anymore, but it's still possible if you then say it requires JDK unsupported. And I really love the name of that module, because it screams at you, don't use me, don't use me. But it helps you out for now, although the name already gives away a little bit of a guarantee that towards the future you might want to resolve some issues. But for now, okay, we're good. Let's see where we are heading now. Okay, actually started, cool. So, let's see if it all works. Okay, first try to log in. It's working, cool. Next, I want to create my board game again because I wiped my database. Oh, hey, that's strange. 415, unsupported media type. Okay. Of course, I saw this coming. I will stop acting now, but this one really threw me off. I had, I think, 8 hours of investigation, maybe even more in this, before I found the answer. And then I realized the answer was right in my face in the logs. Because if you look here, it says, okay, warning, okay, failed to evaluate Jackson deserialization, blah, 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 blah. Okay, follow the all the way down. Okay, another deep reflection issue. I forgot to open the command package for my domain module. And that actually is being used as a type in my REST API. So Jackson wants to do some deep reflection on that. Okay. So this is the big difference between where I was in step 5, just doing my modules one by one, and actually running on the module path. So more copy-paste coding. Get rid of that, get rid of that. Oh, sorry. Copy-pasted it to the wrong one. It's of course my domain module that needs to open it. Okay, there we go again. Okay, starts, all good. I have to log in. And now let's see if it works. It works, okay, cool. So can I also retrieve it? I can retrieve it. Okay, last step. Can I get to Board Game Geek? Ah, no, one more issue. Okay, something to do with JaxB. Okay, now I remember. I forgot one thing that I had here initially. So, sorry, Board Game Geek. I changed the dependency in Maven, so I now depend on the reference implementation of JaxB, and that actually the 2.4 version is an actual module, so I have to declare the module name here. So final run, fingers crossed. So login, works, create me a board game, works, now directly to the ratings. Cool, we've got it. We migrated our application. So it's now a modular application. But for those of you who read my abstract, there was a little surprise at the end. There's a bonus round. I was also interested in Kotlin around the same time. So the first question that came to my mind is, does Kotlin support modules? And the answer is, yes it does. Ever since version 1.3 of Kotlin, there's support for modules. And the really cool thing is, they use the same module descriptor. So at first it seems kind of
odd to have a module info.java in your Kotlin project. But in many cases, like my case here, it's fine because you can have mixed language projects depending on the same module descriptor. So there we go. Oh, sorry. Let's close that. So we're going into the main module and going to the most basic class of my whole application, the board game class, and ask IntelliJ to help me out here a little bit. Okay, more further down. Ooh, oh, new. Oh no, that's not what I meant. Sorry. Wrong menu. Sorry. Okay, come on. Convert Java file to Kotlin. Cool. Okay. So let's have a look there. Okay, it's a little verbose over here, so I can get rid of this all. So that's nice cleaning up. Then get rid of the imports. Okay, so I've got myself a Kotlin class. And okay, Kotlin not configured. Well, please help me out. Yeah, Java with Maven. Yes, domain module. Okay, go ahead. So IntelliJ now sets some stuff up, including some Maven configuration, of which I know it's partially wrong. So I'll replace that. This is the Maven configuration that you require for a mixed language setup. So the other thing I want to show is it added here requires Kotlin.standardlib. And like I said, my domain module shouldn't depend on anything, so this might feel a little bit yup. But when you come to think about it, this is actually the same as depending on Java base, and every module implicitly depends on Java base. The only difference here is explicit. Okay, let's see if I kept my promise. Okay, compilation takes a little longer now, especially because it's the first run compiling my Kotlin. But it's starting, and well, here I won't hit my Kotlin class yet, but here I will. And to prove that the whole application still works. Okay, cool. So we've got that working as well. So if you want to use modules and Kotlin together, yeah, it does work. So near the end of my talk, so let's wrap up a little bit. If you want to migrate, and I'm not saying that you should, this talk is definitely not about should you migrate or not. It's more about how to do it. If you want to do it, go bottom up. So start with the very lowest module in your dependency graph, because that's the easiest point to start. It has the least amount of dependencies, get you going, and that way you can go iteratively over your application. But also test all your paths on every step, especially from the moment that you're actually running from the module path, because you will run into runtime issues that you didn't expect. And if you don't test all your paths before deploying to production, then of course your customer will run into these issues and he won't be happy about it. Furthermore, the logs, they have the answer. So there's the reason I kept the 4.15 unsupported media type example in is to show you that the libraries or the frameworks you're depending on might actually throw you off with wrong error messages. Whereas the JVM gives really good output when it comes to issues with the module system. So always check your logs. If you're first migrating to modules and you get unexpected errors, it's most likely the module system throwing you up. And in the end, yeah, too bad to say, but it still involves some pioneering. So if you want to go there, yeah, you need to step up a little bit and work your way around issues that you might not expect. So with that, it's game over. Thanks for attending. If you want to see the code of my demo, it's right there on GitHub. If you want to contact me, see me on Twitter, send me an email, but more preferably, come to me, have a chat, ask some questions, and also please leave your feedback, positive feedback, but also definitely negative feedback so that I can improve for the next run. Thank you.